A jail call between the suspects in Foolio's murder has just leaked, and what's on that tape is beyond chilling. From casually talking about the murder to even hinting at who paid them to do it, the recording reveals way more than anyone expected. I have all the details. Let's get into it. The jail call, laughter after the kill. We got him. That's what one of the voices said on the jailhouse phone call. Calm, almost smug, like they'd just scored a victory, not like they'd just taken a life. The call lasted less than 2 minutes, but every second dripped with a cold, chilling confidence. The kind that feels more calculated than reckless. The kind that makes your skin crawl. But to really understand this, we need to go back, because this murder and those voices go much deeper than one phone call. The murder. Julio Foolio was gunned down in Tampa, Florida, on June 23, 2024, during what was supposed to be a birthday celebration. That night, he'd been posting on social media, telling fans where to pull up, inviting them to a pool party. What he didn't know was that he was being followed not by fans, but by enemies. Law enforcement says the suspects tracked Foolio's every move across the city, using his social media and direct surveillance. They waited until nearly 4:30 in the morning to strike right outside a Holiday Inn. Foolio was ambushed and hit by gunfire from multiple weapons. 3 others were injured but survived. Authorities later identified the shooters as Sean Gaywright, Richard Murphy, and Davian Murphy. 2 other suspects, Isaiah Chance and Elisa Andrews, were accused of helping plan the hit. But what really tied these people together wasn't just their street affiliations. It was their apparent mission to turn this killing.
Put off last year, give him that pirate nub. Man, that post still got his foot shot off, ain't supposed to be bouncing around on his birthday.
Their apparent mission to turn this killing into a spectacle, the setup. Prosecutors said the coordination between the 5 suspects was unlike anything they'd seen. According to the state attorney, they all came to Tampa with one purpose: to kill. Now, with the leaked jailhouse call, we know how they felt afterward. The call was recorded just days after their arrests. It was first sent to local media, then leaked online. In the recording, one of the suspects laughs about the aftermath, even referencing the news coverage that went viral. Another brags that Foolio didn't even see it coming. One suspect even calls Foolio by name, saying he's done for. Let that sink in. A man was gunned down in public, and his killers are in jail laughing about it.
Exit a vehicle and walked in the direction of the hotel. They murdered Jones with a handgun and 2 rifles. This barrage of gunfire also struck 3 additional victims.
This isn't just cold-blooded murder. It's a culture of mockery. They didn't just kill Foolio, they're mocking the very idea that he thought he was safe. What really shook investigators was the tone. There was no fear in the call. No panic. No regret. In fact, the vibe was almost celebratory. One detective compared it to locker room talk. But here, the game was murder, the gang ties. Police had already suspected gang involvement. At a press conference, the Hillsborough State Attorney's office said the suspect.
They are shooting at Charles now, and you can see that he's the passenger in that car that's moving and trying to flee. And again, they're still shooting at him.
Suspects were affiliated with a TK and 1200, both rival gangs to Foolio's 6 block. The investigation found hours of surveillance footage, phone records, and even license plate tracking that proved the suspects followed Foolio from place to place all night. It was a carefully planned setup that ended in tragedy. And if it sounds military-level precise, you're not wrong. But after all that careful planning, they made sloppy mistakes. They didn't cover their track.
Fans knew him as Julio Foolio, but to his mom, he's Charles. We're fighting to make sure that she gets justice.
Cell tower pings, license plate readers, and eyewitnesses quickly helped police piece the puzzle together. Arrests followed soon after. That's when the mood shifted from stealth to showtime. The evidence, one of the biggest pieces of evidence? Surveillance footage. It shows 3 shooters walking in formation, surrounding the hotel entrance, and firing from multiple directions. One shooter even appears to check for movement before reloading. It's the kind of footage meant for a courtroom, but now it's all over the internet. Why this case blew up online? Because the public isn't just seeing the crime, they're hearing the killers laugh about it afterward. This leaked call is more than just disturbing, it's confirmation of what many feared. Some of these killings aren't driven by desperation, they're driven by the desire for fame, clout, and recognition. Even Foolio's harshest critics are shaken by this.
It got to this bit. Tampa, Florida, man. Pool party push up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, man.
If this is how his killers talk after a high-profile murder, what message does it send to the next generation watching? For Foolio's mother, who spoke at a press conference just hours after the arrest, this isn't just about her son. It's about accountability. How many more young black men will be remembered as hashtags before something finally changes? And if you think that jail call was chilling, wait until you hear what one of the suspects did just before the shooting. It could completely change the case, the betrayal. For most people, betrayal comes quietly. For Foolio, it may have started with a text message and ended with bullets. We've already unpacked how 5 suspects tracked and murdered rapper Julio Foolio during his birthday weekend. We've gone through the disturbing jail call that surfaced days later, cold, arrogant, and celebrating death. But what if I told you that might not have been the first time Foolio's name came up on a jailhouse phone? And what if someone close to him helped set the whole thing up? Because this next part isn't about what happened after the murder, it's about the clues that were already there, before the first shot was fired. The setup before the shooting. Let's rewind 48 hours before Foolio's death. He had just arrived in Tampa, promoting his birthday party all over Instagram and other platforms. He told fans to pull up, flashed bottles, and even showed his location on camera. But what Foolio probably didn't realize was how many people were watching, not to party, but to plot. Investigators now believe his location updates acted like a breadcrumb trail, making it almost too easy for his enemies to find him. But it gets worse. Police are now investigating whether someone in Foolio's own circle may have shared his location not by accident, but on purpose. Official statements say the suspect vehicles were trailing Foolio from earlier venues, not just the final stop at the Holiday Inn. So how did they know his full schedule? Even more worrying, Foolio's own mother told prosecutors her son had been trying to lay low, which doesn't line up with his public posts. Friends said he was planning to switch hotels that night, but the shooters got there first. That raises a tough question. Were they simply watching closely, or did someone on the inside give them the play-by-play? The second jail call, here's where things really twist. 2 independent sources say there's a second jailhouse call that hasn't been made public yet. This one reportedly has a very different tone, less bragging, more nervous and coded. Law enforcement hasn't confirmed if this second call is a confession. But what we do know is that one suspect starts asking things like, how much do they really have on us? Who's talking? When you put those questions next to the surveillance footage, phone records, and gang connections, it paints a clear picture.
These individuals have chosen lives of urban terrorism. Florida, Tampa, JSO, Jacksonville, Miami, wherever you are. Will not tolerate foolishness. Will hold you accountable for your criminal actions.
These suspects knew exactly what they were doing, and now they're worried. The ultimate betrayal. Foolio had enemies, public ones. But he also had friends who may have flipped. One of the biggest allegations under review right now is that an associate who had a falling out with Foolio was quietly working with a TK in 1200, the groups believed to be behind the murder. Police haven't released the informant's name, but the timeline matches suspiciously well with the leaked location data and text messages shared among the suspects. Was Foolio set up by someone he trusted? Multiple sources say yes. If that's true, this wasn't just a revenge hit, it was a carefully planned betrayal. A former detective and gang expert said this kind of coordination is almost unheard of outside of cartel activity. What stands out is the mix of street-level tactics with high-tech tracking Instagram stories, live locations, even facial recognition cameras near the hotel. They played chess, said one retired officer. The streets used to be about muscle. This was about surveillance and surgical planning. That's why this second jail call matters so much. It could reveal who the suspects thought was safe to talk to and who they now suspect might flip. But even with all this evidence, prosecutors still have challenges ahead. Why? Because several of the suspects, especially Elisa Andrews, are reportedly considering plea deals, but only if they get reduced charges. Andrews' lawyer has already said she's not waiving her right to a speedy trial, which could mean she's trying to lock in a quick deal. And that deal could come with names of who leaked Foolio's location, who bought the weapons, and who could be next. Because this wasn't a random act, this was part of a chain reaction. At a press conference just days after the murder, Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters didn't hold back. But one big question remains. If these calls were being monitored, why wasn't this stopped sooner? How were these suspects, many already on police radar, able to pull off such a deadly ambush and then brag about it afterward? What is law enforcement doing now to stop the next high-profile hit, especially if Foolio's murder was part of a larger feud that's not over yet? Answers may come in court. Right now, the suspects are waiting for trial. Inside jail, they've reportedly been separated not just to stop them from plotting, but to prevent them from silencing potential witnesses. This story isn't over. And with more jail calls leaking, the truth is bleeding out. Inside the jail, another disturbing reality is taking shape. A power shift. A corrections officer, speaking anonymously, said the men charged in Foolio's death aren't intimidate potential cooperators, and that fear isn't unfounded. There's growing concern that one of the suspects, like Elisa Andrews' Isaiah, Chance has already started talking, while officials have yet to confirm who flipped. Multiple legal sources familiar with Hillsborough County proceedings have noted that the timing of motion filings coupled with unusual visitation restrictions suggest one suspect may have agreed to cooperate with the prosecution in exchange for immunity or lesser charges. If that's true, then the leaked first jail call, the one we've already heard, was just that. Second call, still unreleased, could be something very different. A coded warning, a last-minute attempt to silence someone before they turn, in one chilling line from that still unreleased call, according to someone who claims to have heard it allegedly, includes the phrase, "Tell Shorty not to make this bigger than it got to be." Vague, cryptic, but undeniably threatening. This brings us to the psychological manipulation happening behind the scenes. These suspects aren't just gang members, they're allegedly skilled manipulators. Sources inside the jail system claim that Sean Githright, one of the alleged shooters, has a documented history of using coercive tactics to control younger associates, including gaslighting, emotional leverage, and promises of financial support for families. He runs it like a mob, the source said. Even from inside, he's got dudes scared of him, and this psychological web could be why at least one co-defendant, possibly Andrews, may have hesitated to cooperate, even if it meant taking out murder rap, because loyalty in these crews isn't about friendship, it's about leverage, and the unspoken understanding that snitching means your family becomes a target. But prosecutors are now using that same leverage in reverse by offering one suspect the chance to rewrite the narrative. Here's where things get complicated. Investigators are reportedly trying to determine if Foolio himself was aware he was being set up. Some believe his cryptic last post videos of him looking over his shoulder, his use of multiple hotels, suggest paranoia. Maybe even for knowledge. Was he tipped off? Was he trying to throw someone off in one of the final posts captured before his death? Foolio says, "If you ain't got the addy, you're not meant to be there." On the surface, it's just a party flex, but according to a local journalist who's covered gang violence in Jacksonville for years, that line may have been coded message. He knew he was being hunted. She says he just didn't know when they pounced. And speaking of pouncing, the U.S. Marshals who assisted in arresting Davian and Richard Murphy did so with the kind of tactical force usually reserved federal fugitives. SWAT-style takedowns, pre-dawn raids, streets locked down. Why such intensity? Because these suspects weren't just accused shooters, they were believed to have access to hidden weapons, burner phones, network support from other gang affiliates, and more disturbingly, according to an unsealed affidavit, investigators were concerned about retaliation hits, meaning these murders weren't an isolated incident but part of a larger war, one that may have been reignited by Foolio's murder, even law enforcement is bracing for what's next in an unusual move. Both the Tampa Police Department and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office have increased surveillance on known gang hangouts, enlisted social media analysts to monitor threats, and even begun contact family members of potential targets, because there's one more terrifying piece of the puzzle. Revenge in the gang world. Loyalty is transactional. If someone inside the operation cooperates, not only does it make them a target, it makes their entire lineage fair game for vengeance. And if Foolio's crew believes someone flipped, then this isn't over, it's just the start. That's why every new leak matters. Every jail call, every legal motion, every phone confiscated inside that facility, because buried somewhere in those digital trails is the truth. Who pulled the strings and who got played? Finally, we unravel the truth, beginning with an arrest no one saw coming. A shocking new defendant enters the courtroom, and a key witness makes a confession that flips the entire case on its head. The twist: a new arrest and Foolio's final secret. They thought they had their five suspects, 5 murder charges. 5 people accused of orchestrating the calculated ambush of Jacksonville rapper Julio Foolio on what was supposed to be the highlight of his year, his birthday weekend in Tampa, Florida. But just as the city began bracing for trial, a bombshell dropped. There was a 6th man, and no, he wasn't in the SUV. He didn't pull the trigger. He wasn't even in the same city when the bullets flew, but according to investigators, he may have pulled the strings. He wasn't a known shooter, not even a street affiliate. Technically, he was a former business manager once part of Foolio's team, a man with access to calendars, hotel bookings, show schedules, and most importantly, his trust. This individual allegedly stayed close to Foolio after a quiet fallout, still posing as an insider, but behind the scenes, law enforcement now believes he was funneling real-time information to rival affiliates, tied to a TK and 1200 in a stunning turn of events. Digital forensics recover WhatsApp chats from a burner phone used by suspect Elisa Andrews, and among the messages, a conversation stood out: let the streets take care of it, just make sure dude not moving last minute. Again, the name wasn't in the chat, but prosecutors say the pattern, timing, coordination, and context matches only one person, and when they brought him in for questioning, he folded. According to sealed grand jury testimony, this 6th man admitted he believed Foolio had it coming, that Foolio had grown too paranoid, too controlling, and was planning to fire multiple members of his team just weeks after his birthday bash. So he flipped first. His reward was reportedly a 5F figure payment deposited through a web of small Cash App transfers and third-party digital wallets. In return, he shared just enough detail for the shooters to predict Foolio's moves. This included last-minute confirmation of Foolio's holiday in Switch, which according to police sealed his fate. But here's where the pain deepens. Foolio's fans, already rocked by the initial news of his murder, had no idea that someone who once stood behind the rapper on stage, flashing peace signs, holding iced-out chains, and smiling in interviews, would be implicated as part of the plot. The betrayal stung more than the bullets. On Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, tributes poured in, but so did speculation, theories, and rage. "Y'all snaked the realest one out the city," one fan wrote on X, formerly Twitter. "Foolio always said the ops wouldn't take him. He never expected his own team." Another posted hashtags like #JJustice for Foolio, #6 block for